Hey, it's Kevin Lawn with the New Warehouse Podcast, bringing you a new episode today. I am back at Procensis today. Last time I was here, we were in the Procensis Solution Center 1.0. Now we're in the Procensis Solution Center 2.0, which is, I guess, maybe twice the size, maybe three times the size, actually. It's very nice. I got a little tour before this and got the see the setup. It's all set up to give incredible demos of their offerings and mobile solutions that they provide. And really excited to see how they continue to develop it. But today I'm going to be joined by Aaron Bolton, and he is a founding partner and CTO here at Procensis. So he's going to talk to us a little bit about user interface and optimized user interface when it comes to mobile devices and why that's important and kind of how we've progressed in the warehousing industry when it comes to user interface. But first, of course, we are going to get our safety tip of the day from Aaron. So, Aaron, why don't you share your safety tip today?
Safety tip today for warehouses: don't watch Netflix while you're driving a fork truck.
Right.
There you
That's
go.
good. All right. So definitely don't want to be watching Netflix while you're driving the forklift. Absolutely. So, Aaron, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
I'm happy to be here. Happy to be back at Procensis. I love coming here and seeing what you guys are doing next. You guys are always developing and evolving and coming out with some of the latest stuff, I think, especially when it comes to user interface, which we're going to talk about today. But for those people that are maybe not familiar, why don't you just give us a little brief overview of what it is that Procensis does?
What does Procensis do? Well,
Mm,
Procensis basically, aside from just selling your typical hardware and things like that, we do a lot of innovations when it comes to user experience and
okay.
user interfaces, and we try to make sure that what we do sell
Hmm.
is not only used in a way that works well to get the return on investment that our customers are looking for, but support capabilities, along with all kinds of other different use cases and so forth. We'd like the
Hmm.
people to get the maximum amount of use out of whatever they purchase and provide that support all the way through.
All right, great. And I think the last time we were here, we talked a little bit about some of the hardware aspects with Ed. But we're going to talk today more about the user interface. And as Aaron said, that's one of the things that they really excel at is providing an amazing user interface for your employees and your workers in the operation to make them more productive and more and make their job more enjoyable as well, because it's definitely easier to use. And we'll talk about how we get to that portion. But I think today, what's cool on the podcast, this is a New Warehouse podcast first, is we're going to actually have some visuals on the video. So let's, I guess, start from maybe the beginning of user interface, we could call
Sure.
it, right? So what are we looking at in terms of, what was the, I guess, the old school of user interface for warehousing devices?
You bet. So, I mean, traditionally, when you had user interfaces for wireless devices for in warehousing and so forth, it was something along like the lines of what this device is. So,
Okay.
you've got a typical green screen telnet type of host system. You've got your typical little chiclet keyboard on the bottom there, and the user would either use that with a pistol grip or something else, and that was how they went through their different their day to day using the device and so forth.
Hmm.
And so this was your traditional thing: green, sometimes the cryptic, sometimes not so bad. And then they kind of went from the green screen technology to now
Hmm.
you're doing more of like web interfaces, like for example with
Okay.
SAP ITS Mobile. You have these labels though. You see them. It's like not really very clear labels on what they are for, but
Yeah, so they look like little
exactly.
buttons, but they're not very descriptive. Like, what do they do, right?
Correct,
Yeah.
exactly, and there was always the training of a user for these types of devices always took a long time to do as well. So
Hmm.
sometimes the onboarding process could be anywhere from weeks and months, and then what can you do with that? I mean, it's took time to basically understand what all those little labels and what those functions actually were.
Yeah, and I think that's certainly something that's like a productivity killer. And as you mentioned, it increases the training time as well because when it comes to things like that, it's not descriptive. It's really becomes like tribal knowledge, or you have to create a cheat sheet for them to carry around, and then they lose the cheat sheet. You have to reprint the cheat sheet. You have to give another copy for them to remember these types of things. So obviously the non-descriptive on the screen is certainly a drawback. So then where do we kind of take it from there? How do we fix that issue?
Well, what we've seen now is that a lot of these keyboard-based devices, we're now moving more towards devices that have no keyboard, where they're looking more like your typical smartphones. They're actually very capable. They have typically, similar features to a normal smartphone.
Mm-hmm.
And then we run into these other challenges. The reason why these phones are so popular, or these devices are so popular, is because one, they are easier to make, for one thing, and the other thing is that they have very common a common type of look and feel that people are used to using in everyday life nowadays. And so there's a nice demand for that. But you can see that just using the green screen like this, there's a little bit of a problem where you have to think about using a keyboard and so forth. You still have to do some data input along with the scanner, and there's a pop-up keyboard for that. But then if you look at this type of device along with the web-based system used to look like as well, you would have these different issues. But what we can do is we take that green screen, and we can now turn that into something where it's HTML based. Okay. So instead of having your typical green screen where you had cryptic keys, you now have the ability to turn that into a web interface pretty easily. And that's that's like the drag and drop piece of what you can do with this product, which we use and has some really great tools to be able to do plugins and things like that. But you can see that, like, for example, the back button is a simple word back. You don't have to hunt for a function key. You don't have to find it on the keyboard and kind of have like some thumb memory to remember where it's at. But you could also skip pick, next HU. Those are all very clear text labels that get you to where you need to go. Right. And one of the other things that's kind of unique about this is that you can use different colors to highlight different components. For example, make the bin easier to see, or make certain things that different colors or bigger so that they're easier to get to. But you can also add like little plugins. Like, for example, there's a little icon to the right of the part number. Okay. So that you can add some functionality, like, for example, to pop up the picture of the product itself. So if you,
wow, so you can actually see what it looks like that you're supposed to pick. Yeah.
You can link that to an external database or something where it has the pictures for those part numbers so that you can see it. But the other thing too is that instead of having the keyboard up all the time, like you would have a keyboard on a regular keyed device, you now have the ability to pull that keyboard up. Like, for example, when you get to the next screen they're showing is the actual where you're entering the part number, or not the part number, the quantity, I'm sorry. And so when it automatically pops up the proper keyboard for the proper time. So you can set that for if a field requires alphanumeric, you can put an alphanumeric. If it's numeric only, as in this case, it pops up automatically, moves the field out of the way, and gives you that numeric keypad quite easy to use, since it's got that nice big keys and so on.
Yeah, and so then it kind of makes it almost even more similar to what we use every day, right, in our lives as a mobile device, right? So how does that, translate to the employees and the users of this? How has the user face really helped them to kind of pick up on it more easily and be able to kind of adapt to the changes?
Well, the nice thing about this is that it's exactly the thing that you were saying there, is that it does make it a lot easier for users to use this type of system, because underneath it's still the green screen, but on the top what you're seeing is the actual representation of that in a web interface with buttons, which people are already used to using, two hands to text. Yeah. So texting with or using your thumbs to type is not like you're hunting and picking with a finger, but you're able to use that thumb. People are very much able to take a device like this on an older system, and now that training time has been reduced to days and hours instead of weeks and months, because it's very intuitive. You can put full text labels where they used to be abbreviated labels. Right. You can rearrange things from the screen or eliminate things that aren't necessary, like, for example, fields that just don't get used very often or they don't matter. You can remove those from the screen and just kind of give them what they need to see at that time in a way that makes it easier to use.
Gotcha. And earlier we were talking about the the function keys, right? So you had those function keys on the green screen, and then we talked about like the kind of the web base where it was just the function screen, no description. So what happened to the function keys here? Where did they go?
They're still there. It's in the background, but when you press the back button, it's going to do that F3 as if you pressed it on the keypad itself. We're just assigning a value to a button. And then it kind of leans to, like, for example, what do you do? Talking about the user interface, like this is just a simple telnet to HTML. But what's the real fun stuff, and where we've done some innovations, is when we move to the next part, when you have these, this ITS mobile screens. I mean, you look at a menu screen like this,
Right.
where it's super difficult to use out of the box. So what we do is we'll enhance that to give you something where the buttons are easier to press.
Yeah.
You don't have to worry about hitting a number and then the button. Things like instead of having a down arrow for down, you can actually say the word.
Just press down. Yeah.
Exactly.
It's even like easier to read too. I think it gets a little bigger as well. Yeah.
I mean, even the back button is not on the previous screen. It's just there because we've added it so that the user can go back. But yet it's a function key that would normally work. But you would have to know that and be trained to know that instead of it actually being there for you to use.
Yeah. So it's kind of like there's a whole. I mean, if you think about it in the previous way, like there's a whole training just on how to use the device before you even get to the training portion of doing the actual work you're going to do.
You're absolutely correct.
Whereas this, it's very much just like, I mean, if you look at it, it's just like a cell phone, right? So
it gets even better because you take another screen like this next one you're scanning in the bin. I mean, you look at those labels. I mean, they're horrific in a sense because it's so standard. And, it's very difficult for a new person to look at that and say, okay, well, I kind of know that I'm supposed to scan a bin here, but it's very different. And then that screen could be translated into something like this, where it's bigger. The things that are important to the business are highlighted, and you have these other options. It makes it so much simpler. And the training times on this type of interface, like you said, are so much easier because you've got this versus the previous screen. And gosh, I mean, heck, if I was coming into a new system, or you have these workers today, especially in the gig economy, where people are only coming in for a day or two to work,
a little bit,
and then you have a system like this versus the previous screens. It's so much easier for them just to jump in, get to work, know what they're doing, and be able to get the pay that they're looking for, and then the business is able to get the work that they need.
Yeah, I think that's a huge thing because even like the training. You don't want to invest a lot of time because I think even though, you're talking about the gig economy, people are in and out, and, I think the environment is so competitive too that, people are, they're jumping ship just for like 50 cents more an hour or something, and some other bonus that another warehouse is offering. So, when you have turnover that you can't necessarily control as much, you want to get people up and running as fast as possible. So that really makes it possible. I mean, I can see the difference in, even just, I think the initial look at it is like, so if I came in to the job and I pick up the device for the first time, I look at it, it's like, it seems more inviting, I guess, in a sense. It's not like, it doesn't look like, oh my God, like, what am I going to do with this? Like, what is this? So very cool stuff. So, and, so I see, on this one here, it looks like, we've enhanced the buttons as well, but I think you guys go even further as well to do the rest, right?
Well, so there's, for example, the next one. Basically, for example, when you're entering in fields, you don't sacrifice any of those things because most people think of, modernization, that's green screen to HTML. That's becoming more of a known thing.
Yeah.
But they don't think about that you could do the same type of thing with a web interface. Like for this one, the modernization of this one is that you can still do the pop-up keyboards to match, just like you were doing before. So the right keyboard at the right time.
Yeah.
You can still do the plugins, any type of plugin that you want to do, and you have all these choices and options that you can do to provide functionality that maybe you don't want to go back to the business system and put time and money into adding functionality. If it could be done here, then let's do that. Like we have some customers that like to add multiple steps into one button. So they would add a new button on the screen and it takes them forward through, anywhere from 5 to 20 screens, automatically putting in data into fields and so forth to take advantage of that modern and optimized interface.
Very interesting. So it's very flexible too. It sounds like and customizable, right? So I think it's really an incredible thing. And I think I do have one question, I guess, for user interface for you. Like, why I guess why did we not do this kind of thing before?
Well, a lot of it has to do with the horsepower of the device itself. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
quite frankly, we've come a long way
Okay.
since the old days.
Yeah.
And with today's modern technology, when you have octa-core processor,
Mm-hmm.
massive amounts of RAM compared to the old devices, modern operating system like Android, now you can run any Android application that you would normally run on a phone. You
Mm.
can now run on these devices, and now plus you're seeing a lot more of the business systems that either have custom applications or they still want to get that life out of their original system. I mean, when they put in like for traditional green screen, and if you can add the ability to use modern devices and
Mm.
get this nice beautiful interface, and they don't have to do anything on the back end to make
Yeah.
it happen, that's a good thing. I mean, we've one of our bigger projects that we've done. We took probably an old green screen system that had been developed over probably a decade, which had been done by different developers. So the screens all look different. Sometimes
Okay.
even navigating the screen was different.
Mm.
And we were able to take it and put a modern interface on it so that their entire system looked like it was clean, one common interface. Everything worked exactly the same no matter what was underneath.
Mm.
And there's training times were significantly reduced, as well as increasing their productivity and getting the users to a much better state and
Yeah.
help their business.
Hmm. Interesting. And I think the one thing, we've talked about a lot here is the increase or the decrease in the training time overall, and that improvement. Obviously, that's a huge ROI, I think, right away. So, but I think, maybe looking at it for the first time, maybe people are might have the impression that like a different screen, like what difference is that going to make? So like how do you kind of tackle that mindset, and how do you, I guess, convince people that, like, really actually changing the screen makes a big difference?
Well, that's one of the beauties about a place like this is that we
Yeah.
actually show people, here's how you can do it one way, and here's how you do it traditionally, and this is the kind of time benefit that you gain just in process. I mean, especially when you're talking about, using any kind of mobile technology or
Hmm.
hands-free technology. You introduce that on top of this type of user interface, the gains are just tremendous because
Yeah.
again, people have gotten to the point now where they're used to using this type of device.
Mm.
You've got the keyboard that's a pop-up. You're able to navigate it just as easily as you would a normal phone that you use every single day. So the memory is there, the commonality is there, plus the ability to navigate through the actual processes can
Yeah.
be simplified, and the time savings on that just really adds up.
Mm.
And so it's and how do we get people to understand that? Really, it's by taking advantage of opportunities like this to
Mm.
show when we do demos, we're doing
Yeah.
them live so that they can see the time savings themselves.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the demo, and I've seen examples of the demo that you guys do. It's pretty incredible. And obviously, we're here in the demo center, solution center, where the demos take place. This is where the magic happens, right?
Right.
So, I think even if I think about you guys, the user interface is kind of, it's throughout everything you do. It's not just like, as a company. I mean, it's not just the creating better user interfaces for the customers. You're also creating like a better user interface for your demos too, right? So kind of like the video that we're seeing here, with visuals on the screen. I mean, you guys are able to show that to anybody anywhere in the world, right?
That's right. And the great thing about it too is that we don't ever show anything that actually isn't real. So
that's
our
that's
demos
good
are
to know.
actually
Yeah.
live systems. So if we're showing something as a demo or as a technology, it's
Mm-hmm.
because we already know that it works, and we're
Mm.
able to demonstrate that and able to basically go in and either to provide an actual functional demo for them to use in
Mm.
hand if they need it, um, or remotely if we can't meet with them directly. And we've done a tremendous amount of opportunities remotely, especially
Mm.
with the way the world is today. That taking advantage of remote tools and the doing all remote deployments, remote development, remote basically remote everything. It's
Yeah,
been
yeah,
it's
it's
been
the
actually
new
kind
world,
of
right?
good for us in that way.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So it's awesome to see that, and also those demos, and I think kind of knowing you for a little bit, and working with you a little bit as well, and just talking to you earlier today. I mean, I think you're constantly working on new kind of customizations and different aspects of the user interface to help the customers, and for me, it seems like if the customer has some idea, like it seems like you can figure it out. So, what is kind of the next thing? I think we have some kind of visual here of, a new thing that you've been working on. I heard, maybe completed just this morning, fresh.
Well, yeah, I mean, one of the things that we have going on is we have a little bit of a dashboard at the top here. That one of the things that we're finding in today's day and age is that there's a lot of businesses that in competition for workers,
Right.
that there's a lot of incentive-based pay options. There's different ways to try to incentivize users to help them to be able to know how well they're doing throughout the day, but also the gamification of things. There's a lot of
Right.
talk about that these days, where you basically show people what they're capable of and what other people are doing the same, so that people can see, how do I stack up? How am I doing compared to my coworkers? Or, at least for the very least for themselves, like how am I doing against myself? And so we've created a dashboard that kind of gives you, the ability to track for yourself, picks by X, basically, how many picks am I doing in X amount of time?
Right.
Picks per shift, your total number of scans that you've done, and also like the time between picks, like how long is it taking you to get from point A to point B versus the standard.
Yeah.
And so these are some of the easiest and most common things to do, and it's all done locally on the device. So it's not pulling the data from another system; it's actually tracking what the user's doing as they're working through the business system. So because we've already done some work on either the modernization and optimization, or for example, they have that on the same thing with the web interface. If we're touching the device, we have the ability to work with these different KPIs and to provide some feedback real time to the user. And that's really what it's about. It's about that real time feedback to the end user, so that they can see, how am I doing?
Right.
If I know that I have to have so many picks done in a day or so many picks per hour, and if I exceed that, I'm going to get paid more, then I'd like to know that. How close am I to that?
Yeah.
And is this 10-minute talk that I'm having with my coworker costing me money? Well, now I can see how.
Yeah, absolutely.
And why.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's an incredible thing, and I love the fact that you mentioned it's local from the device itself. So meaning that you don't have to necessarily have a totally sophisticated system in place, or you don't have to have a separate labor management system in place to make this happen either. It's coming right off the device, so it's not like you have to come in and implement a whole new system. It's right there for the user to see. And like you said, I think it's huge motivation for a user, especially if you're doing incentive-based pay. And you get to see, like you said, that 10-minute conversation is hurting your pocket potentially, right? So I think it's a really good thing, because in my experience too, I've seen where sometimes employees they don't know how they did until maybe the next day or at the end of the week or something like that, because the company doesn't necessarily have a system in place that can easily extract that data or give it to them real time. So being able to add that in, and I think give that visual to the employees is a huge thing. So it's a huge step in a big direction, I would say. So what else in terms of user interface do you think you guys have coming up next, or what are some things you're working on?
Well,
that you can say.
Well, one of the things is definitely being able to take something like this and either tie that into a labor management system, or to if someone doesn't have a labor management system, being able to kind of provide I don't want to call it a poor man's LMS, so to speak, but something along those lines, where labor management systems can be very cost prohibitive for smaller businesses, and or even for sometimes larger businesses. But if you have something like this, it gives you that opportunity to pull that. We want to also be able to pull that data and aggregate it if possible in the future. But we're always innovating with different mobile technologies. There's heads-up display devices that are working out really well. Some augmented reality, pure voice-based systems. We're basically doing a lot of work in those areas to basically provide those types of opportunities to our customers to be able to still use them with these types of older business systems. So you've got this older business system that you've spent all this money on, but you want to take advantage of it and use it with some of these really cool, modern, time-saving systems. Heck, that's what we do. That's the thing that we do best, is to take those types of things and bring them to the older business systems that wouldn't normally be able to do those types of things.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's huge because you're able to, without doing a huge costly upgrade of system or changing system or going through some insane implementation, which I know is like a scary word for a lot of people. But you're able to kind of modernize and make your devices better essentially for your employees and help them come into 2022 and beyond, and be able to better interact with the device and things of that nature. So it's very interesting to see kind of the progression of user interface, I guess in our industry and on these devices, and especially how you guys have been able to push it forward as well, and what you've been able to do and develop. So for people that are watching, listening, thinking, it seems like maybe this is a lot of work, or it's intensive to get to this point. Like it must be like some huge thing. Why don't you kind of talk us through, how does a potential customer, how does a customer get to this point of having like an optimized user interface?
Absolutely. I mean, and that's the beauty of this whole process, is that it's really not that long and doesn't
Mm-hmm.
really cost that much in the way of resources or finances.
Mm.
Basically, I mean, a system like this can be implemented relatively quickly. We do a lot of point of proof of concept things that
Okay.
probably the quickest and easiest thing to do is to do a proof of concept where you take your simple login, your basic menu system, and a typical transaction, which most people would have a tendency to pick a picking transaction
Right.
because it's relatively easy to do. But even with full scale implementations, you're basically sitting down and working with somebody to understand what is the pain points.
Mm-hmm.
What is the current UI that you're using? What are the pain points that you're having? And then you work out also what would you like it to look like? Like these are the colors. These are typically people want to use their corporate colors.
Yeah.
And we'll work with them on that and kind of do a lot of that legwork ahead of time. And you get a basic idea of what would work for them, or what are some of the things that they would like to see that can't be implemented for whatever reason, too
Mm.
cost prohibitive, or, you know, this function doesn't exactly work. And then we see what can we do to make that happen. And most of these types of systems, like for example, a proof of concept typically takes only a few days to actually implement.
Okay.
There's a process where you do that basic talk about the UI, and then you basically work with them to capture the screens that from the original business system,
Mm.
whether it's the telnet based screens or even the web pages. We have a mechanism
Okay.
to do that. And then we take those original screens and then we use them to basically proof out the rest of the changes, which
Okay.
only take a few days to do, because we've already developed all these methods and mechanisms to make this happen. So we pass that savings on to the person that we're working with,
Mm.
and so we can do these implementations sometimes in as little as a couple of days, but some typically about a week for a proof of concept,
Oh wow.
and sometimes for a bigger project, we're talking usually about a month
Mm.
at the most for like maybe a dozen or more transactions. So
Yeah.
it can be very quick and easy to implement because we've basically done through this. We've worked through this before, and we've done all the prep work so that when we're working with a customer, it's a very well-oiled machine, so to speak, in that
Right.
that
Yeah.
regard. It's like really just getting down and understanding what they want to accomplish, showing them how it can be done in this first proof of concept, and once they get a taste of it,
Mm.
it goes from there.
It's tasty.
So
Yeah.
it's it's a great thing to see, because a lot of times people look at it and they're like, oh, I don't know about that. And then
Mm.
once they do this little proof of concept, I mean, it's less than $10,000 to do a proof of concept,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah.
And you get that out there and you get into the user's hands, they never want to go back
Oh yeah.
because it's so inexpensive to add additional transactions, and they
Mm.
just the gains that you get not only from the time savings,
Mm.
but from the user interactions and the user experience. So now you're talking not
Mm.
just the UI, but now you've improved the user experience for the very reasons that you were talking about before.
Yeah.
Easier to use, looks better, it's easier to navigate, easier to see.
Mm.
It reminds me of my cell phone,
It's more
which I already
relatable, yeah.
know.
Yeah.
And so and then you can add these other little things to it, like the images for the product, or you can add a date picker, or all
Mm.
these other things that you wouldn't have in your application, but make inputting the data easier, quicker,
Mm.
more intuitive, things that they're used to seeing on a regular web page or on a cell phone.
Yeah, yeah. So it makes total sense to try it and get that proof of concept, and obviously, getting something done in as little as a week, I think is a huge thing as well. So obviously, not as even though it seems like maybe it might be intensive to get to such a nicer looking screen and interface than you had before. It's not really. So it's really interesting. So, and you mentioned there, kind of the customer can say what do they want it to look like and all these different things. So I'm curious, before we kind of wrap up here, what's probably the most interesting or creative request you've had from a customer to put into their interface?
What's the most creative? Well, that dashboard was probably the most creative one. That was actually
Oh, okay.
driven by a customer request
Yeah.
because they happen to have an LMS system that only updates a few times a day,
Mm,
2 times a day, and then they wanted to be able to provide that feedback to their users, but they just don't have the system to make it happen.
right.
And so that was driven by a customer request.
Okay.
And so they said that was a great idea, and we went ahead and did it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's a great idea. I loved it when you were telling me about it earlier. I was like, "Huh, oh my god, that's so cool." But yeah, I mean, I think things like that, and the fact that you're able to listen to the customer and try and get creative with what they're looking for, I think is definitely a huge selling point for it as well. So really, really great stuff and interesting to hear about all the user interface and just like how important and what a difference it can make and how far we've come and how far Procensis has pushed user interfaces as well. I think is a great thing. So Aaron, I want to thank you for bringing me to, I guess, Procensis and the Solution Center 2.0. And I'm very happy to be here. And if you get a chance to check out the Solution Center 2.0 here at Procensis or talk to the guys at Procensis, I highly recommend you do so. Get a demo and see just how cool the user interfaces are. And if people who are watching or listening want to do that, how can they do that, Aaron?
Well, the easiest way is to give us a call and talk to anyone from our sales team. Actually, probably anyone in the company could direct you to somebody that
Okay.
how to make that happen. It's very straightforward and easy to do.
All right, great. And we'll put all that information at thenewwarehouse.com as well. So thank you to Procentis and Aaron for having me here at the Solution Center. And thank you for listening and tuning in.
My pleasure. Thank you.